A man who has, dominated much of the early transfer talk this summer, that is Bryan Mbeumo. Will he be following Thomas Frank out of Brentford? And if so, will it be to Spurs or will it be to Manchester United? We spoke to the player yesterday, and you'll have seen that with us, I'm sure. Wasn't giving too much away, was he? Let's, before we come to the Spurs angle on this, get the Manchester United perspective with you, Mark. Linked with him for some time. They've got competition from Tottenham Hotspur. How confident are they of getting their man?
Well, Manchester United will be supremely confident of getting a player that they've identified as someone that can massively improve that attack at Old Trafford. We know that they're relaxed about their pursuit of Bryan Mbeumo. In fact, really, he had turned down other Premier League sides to get to the point where Manchester United were lodging bids for Bryan Mbeumo. Their first offer was rejected, which we understand to be around £55 million. But they know that Bryan Mbeumo has effectively chosen Manchester United. Now, we say effectively, that was at the point maybe a week, 10 days ago, when there were the teams at the table and he said, right, thanks very much for everyone's interest, but I've decided to go to Manchester United. I know Michael is going to interrupt me in a minute and say, hang on a second, things have changed at one North London club in the last few days, and therefore could that change the destination of Bryan Mbeumo? He has 1 year left on his Brentford contract, but the club do have an additional year, so therefore it's effectively a 2-year deal that would get Bryan Mbeumo out of his contract. We know that there is interest, and we know that Brentford want around £60+ million for the wide man, who's been there since 2019. His numbers stack up, very consistent with what he does, brilliant relationships with every single person he's been at Brentford. Ivan Toney, Said Benrahma, Ollie Watkins. He's been a consistent force there, but has his Brentford days come to an end?
And if they have, it seems to point to Manchester United then. But, Michael, Thomas Frank's arrival at Spurs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there have been discussions throughout the last week to 10 days, Brentford and Tottenham Hotspur, very amicable discussions. Thomas Frank, the coaching staff, and initial discussions over Bryan Mbeumo. I think for Brentford, it's getting the deal they want, is it? I don't think they're necessarily interested on the club he eventually joins. There's Anton Semenyo Spurs are looking at as well, and there's a number of players around Europe Spurs are looking at in those attacking positions. I think for Mbeumo, what I understand is he's quite intrigued by a potential prospect of reuniting with Thomas Frank. For me personally, I still think it does lean towards Manchester United. Gone are the days about they want to play in the Champions League, they want to play in Europe. It's still Manchester United at the end of the day. But what Tottenham do have on their side is one, yes, they've got Champions League football and a manager he knows ever so well in Thomas Frank. So it's very much a wait and see. It's an intriguing one, but he potentially does have a decision to make.
Does the arrival of Matthias Tel affect a potential deal in any way?
Nothing to do with it whatsoever. Right. Matthias Tel was always going to stay. Ange Postecoglou said to me in a press conference that I've signed him for the long term. Unfortunately, Ange won't be there, but it will be Thomas Frank. But Tel's 19. He's still very young. Now, when Spurs signed Matthias Tel on loan, it was with an option to buy him permanently. Spurs have brought that fee down. That's what Spurs have done. But my understanding was it was always going to be a permanent. And also, Thomas Frank has given the thumbs up on this deal. So that's an exciting one in itself. But Tottenham's transfer plans going forward have no bearing on the permanent sign of Matthias Tel.
I don't want to go away too much from the agenda, but Thomas Frank's record for developing players and improving players is sensational. You know, he worked with the Denmark under-16s, 18s. He's been around working with young players, and as obviously you just have to look at the roll call of honour of Brentford players that have all improved under him. I think he'll have a fascinating role in what they do over the course of this summer, and I think the recruitment will be one to watch.
So we'll see where Mbeumo maybe ends up, whether it be Brentford, Manchester United or Tottenham. Speaking of United, strikers, big talking point at Old Trafford this summer. We'll talk about Viktor Gyökeres in a moment, but let's start with Hugo Ekitike, with you, Mark. Is he an option for Amorim?
He's certainly a player of interest for Manchester United. Obviously, they're exploring the market at the moment. They're looking to try and recruit a number 9. A lot of Manchester United fans will say, well, hang on a sec, what about Xerxes? What about Rasmus Højlund? We know there has been links, according to Sky in Italy, with a return to Italy and Inter Milan for Højlund. As far as he's concerned, he wants to stay at Old Trafford and fight for his place. Maybe be fighting against Hugo Ekitike or Viktor Gyökeres. over the course of next season. Now, there has been initial talks between United and Eintracht Frankfurt. No formal bid at this stage yet. Manchester United just considering their options. We understand that personal terms are not likely to be an issue for Hugo Ekitike. The price may be, though. Eintracht Frankfurt have said they want around 100 million euros for the youngster, someone who nearly joined the Premier League a couple of seasons ago because Newcastle were very much interested, and we know how good Newcastle's recruitment has been over the last couple of years. So if you've got a team like Newcastle watching a young player, clearly means there's something there, but not the only striker. And I think that's the key thing to point out here is Manchester United have not put all their eggs in one basket. They're saying, well, there's one player that we like and we've opened dialogue. However, no bid yet, and that's always key.
Who's certainly proved he can hack it in the Premier League already. Brian Mbeumo, what a season he had for Brentford. Will he be following his boss, Thomas Frank, out of the club, though? Could he be heading to either Tottenham or Manchester United this summer? We'll get the Spurs angle shortly, Michael. Let's start with you, Mark. Manchester United, long link with Brian Mbeumo. Now they have competition for him. How confident will they be that they can sign him?
Well, they'll be really confident because there's been other Premier League sides that have also shown an interest in Brian Mbeumo as well. And actually, he's turned them down to join Manchester United. So the late interest from Tottenham is a spanner in the works, but I don't think it will disrupt this potential deal. Manchester United, as far as they're concerned, are relaxed about the current situation. They believe that Brian wants to join them in Old Trafford, so therefore they're confident, comfortable and relaxed with regards to his stance. You have to remember that Manchester United last week had their initial and first bid rejected by Brentford, which we understand to be a total of £55 million. Brentford looking for upwards of £60 million. So they're not a million miles away. You'd imagine that a second offer, which we said last week on Sky Sports News was being prepared, will be a lot closer to what Brentford are looking for. Brian Mbeumo has 1 year left on his Brentford contract with a club option additional year. So essentially he's got a 2-year deal left. So it is going to be a sizable fee that Manchester United are going to have to pay. However, he's not the only target they're looking at. They would be naive if they were to only put all their eggs in one basket, because things change in football and things change very quickly, as Michael knows. So therefore, they do have other options, but right now, it looks like it's going to be a Manchester United situation for Brian Mbeumo.
Spurs' interest, just a spanner in the works, to quote Mr. McAdam. Does Thomas Frank's arrival
don't quote me.
change that?
Well, let me just say, Spurs and Brentford have had very good negotiations over the last 10 days or so, and we've been reporting day after day on Thomas Frank's appointment at Tottenham Hotspur. That was never in doubt, and I'm sure people were bored of me saying it every day. But what I kept stressing was the delay. Well, not really a delay, it's probably the wrong word, but the coaches coming in, and they've taken some good coaches from Brentford. Now, you do wonder now what potential players Thomas Frank might fancy at Brentford, and does he want to take a number of players from Brentford? It is talking Nathan Collins, the defender who's been absolutely brilliant for them at Brentford. But in terms of Mbeumo, there have been initial discussions about a potential deal. They are interested in him. Antoine Semenyo is another player Spurs like as well. But at this stage of the window, they are just one of a number of top attacking players Spurs have been in discussions with. The encouragement Spurs have had, Jules, is the fact that Brian Mbeumo and Thomas Frank have a brilliant relationship. I mean, who doesn't like Thomas Frank? I'm not being funny, but they have a brilliant professional relationship. He's been absolutely outstanding. There was